Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammang sanghang namasami. Dear friends, today's talk will focus on the third of the four nutriments of existence. That is what's called in Pāli the Mano Sanchetana āhāra, the creative intentions nutriment. In developing these talks, I'm very grateful for those of the participants here today that have been attending regularly in our weekly programs. Some of the ideas that come out during this retreat are ideas that have been coming up over the weeks and days leading up to it as I ponder about the topic and try out some ideas and have the discussions with you. And that means I hope that when we hear about it for the second, third, fourth, or fifth time, that then the meaning can sink in and really be very well understood. And furthermore, in the comments and discussions that we've had, several of those who are participating have been able to express both your own study and insights and what you have learned from other teachers and other reading that you've done, as well as what you have learned from your own personal experience. And so your participation in the discussion is the nutriment for the creation of these Dhamma talks, and that's a good thing. So we do appreciate that. I'm seeing a comment about the audio quality. I'm going to try to get the microphone closer to me.
Excuse me, this is on an AI. I just want, my audio is fine.
Oh, thank you.
Maybe we should check in with who does or doesn't have.
Can you hear me now? Put a thumb up if you can hear me. Okay.
Yes, much better. Thank you.
So, this nutriment, it's usually translated as volition. Volitional thought has a chief meaning in this context of kamma. That is to say, those actions which start in the mind, they start in a cetana, in an intentional. So those intentional actions which are producing rebirth and affirming our life, affirming our continuation of life. The Buddha has compared this to a man dragged by two other strong men into a pit of glowing embers. The two dragging forces are a person's karmic actions, the good but still deluded actions, and the evil actions. Whatever our karmic proclivities are, whatever the life-affirming volitions are, that is what do we choose in order to protect this life? What are we choosing in order to continue this life? What are we choosing for the benefit of having a life, and hopefully having a life that's not just the minimum of bare survival, but maybe a little bit above the level of minimum survival? These are the choices we make. And these thoughts create karma and is the nutriment for rebirth in the three planes of existence. I have to say that during this past year, the division of the three levels of existence has become more and more important to me. For the longest time, I felt that when we took the karma that caused us to have to be born as a human being, we inherited an entire package, like an entire program. The minute we were conceived, or the minute we entered into the newly conceived, I forget what they call it, zygote or whatever it is of this being which is coming to birth, and our they say it's called the Gandhabba in the Pāli, that we chose this womb to get into, to take this life. And when we got that human birth, we, in our genetic code, we inherited a whole itinerary. It's like getting on a cruise, and you've got the itinerary, like it's going to stop in Athens, and then it's going to stop in Egypt, and it's going to stop, somewhere else, and you get a chance to go along on a journey which has these different stops along it. And so we got, as a human being, we got all of these things in the package already, baked in the cake. And not only that, but the choices that led to our birth also led us to be born in a particular time and place. And so we were born into a particular culture. We were born into a particular physical world with certain qualities, like a climate that was difficult, or a climate that was very harsh, or a climate that was pleasant and abundant, or into a society which was a beneficent, kind, and good society, or get born into a cruel and unjust society. All of these different things are like already in the program when we took to human birth. This is what I thought for a long time. But then this year, as I've been reflecting more about the Kama Loka, this is the world of sense desire, the Rupa Loka, which is called the fine material world, and the Arupa Loka, which is the immaterial world. I realized that also, just by taking a birth as we have in that world of sense desire, so much that's deep and profound, it's in the program when we landed here. And especially, I don't know about very many practitioners who seriously are striving for the immaterial realm of existence. Perhaps it was more popular in ancient times than it is today. But I certainly know that there are many, many people in the world who are aiming for heaven, striving for a heavenly rebirth. And in the Buddhist system, That's what's called the fine material realm of existence. So the volition, the karma that we create as a result of the choices that we make, if we don't obtain our full awakening, and if we don't come to the end of rebirth, then the choices we make would determine what is coming after the end of this life. And then even within this life, the choices that we make are going to a tremendous extent to create the type of world where we live. So I'll circle back to this in a minute. The tendency that we have as humans, we can create so much which is beneficial and beautiful towards pleasant, good, satisfying, and safe existence for us as an individual, and also to be shared with others in our communities and in society. And we're also, as humans, capable of the most unbelievable levels of what is harmful, of doing tremendous harm to ourselves and doing tremendous harm to one another. In both cases, even the person who is some kind of a moral monster who is doing a lot of harm at some kind of level, there's something in that individual that wants to live. Perhaps it's that they want to be on top. They want to vanquish their enemies and be on top. And that's what seems to them to be the way to live. We can have some amount of sympathy for every being that has the desire to live. And to know that it's something that it's our common inheritance. Just like a person needs to take food in order to live, you can't avoid it. Even if you are an enlightened person, you still will be taking food, and you still will be having sensory experiences. Now, an enlightened person has made some kind of a very significant break. They are still doing things on purpose. They're still exercising volition. They still may be making choices that in the common sense you would say it's something creative, like the Buddha created a body of teachings, and the Buddha founded the fourfold Sangha with the Bhikkhus and Bhikkhunis having their discipline of the Vinaya and their system for passing the trainings down. So that was a kind of a mundane level of experience. But even as the Buddha was doing that, he was beyond creating any kind of psychological impulse or impetus that would be leading him onto another life. I want to bring up a different way of looking at it. So the nutriment of food is pretty much at the level, the physical, materialistic level of a living body. The nutriment of contact is sort of at the boundary between what is physical, like the physical apparatus of the sense organs in the body, and the mind. So the sense contacts is at the boundary between the physical and the mental. And then the volition is one of the aspects of mentality. It's one of the functions of the mind. And so now we're in the realm of the mental. And we could think of mental activity as having two types. One is, I could call it the receptive type of mental activity, which could be involved in feeling, perception, knowing, understanding, these kinds of mental activities. And then the active side is when it's the mental activity associated with making a decision, making a plan, and then taking the actions to do the plan. So if I wanted to have a cup of a drink, I had the idea and then I planned to do it, and then there's another set of volitional activities involved in lifting the cup up and taking it to my lips to have the drink. So all of those things, there's volition is involved in it. These two aspects, the receptive and the active, you could say that the samadhi, our right view, is focusing on understanding. So that's kind of on the receptive side, wisdom. And then sama sankappo, our right intention, the intention of non-harming, the intention of renunciation free from greed, of kindness free from ill will, and of compassion free from cruelty, that those are related to the active side. Even on the receptive side, there is an element of volition. When we're having these experiences, we are choosing where to direct our attention. We are choosing which perception is the most matching to the situation. So this is in philosophy, there's a term that I like very much. It's called intentionality, which is that when we have a thought, we're thinking about something. And so just in the process of having that thought, we're creating an image in the mind of what the something is that the thought is about. And actually, it's the image is the thing that we're experiencing. So I'm not, like if I were to take this sip of tea, I don't actually experience the tea. I generate a perception in the mind which is more or less matching up to tea, and I experience something that's an activity of the mind. But so these are choices. We know a lot that perceptions can be like an incorrect. We chose a perception, and it turns out when we look further or look more carefully, that actually the perception we have is not a good representation of what's really going on, and then we could change our perceptions. This is showing how even just having a perception or even just coming to an understanding, that is an action. And then you could say a person who is a very, I guess you could say, a passive kind of person where they're just trying to understand things. They're not interested in doing anything. They just, what drives them is they want to understand. And so they study the world, and they study and study and study, and they come to understand, but they're not really trying to change the world, just to understand it. But even that person has built up in their mind an inner world system. They've created a whole world. So they've done a creative action just with that act of understanding. And then on the active side, when we're involved in doing something, I want to have a cup of tea, or I want to organize a Dhamma event, or I want to cause my monastic community to come to an agreement by having a meeting. Those are doing things which are more active, but there's always the possibility to be an observer participant and to be aware even during the process. So even while we're actively involved in doing things, there is still the other side, that receptive side going on. I suggest that in order to make good choices and actually to come to the transcending wisdom about the volitional choices that we make, we have to bring our volitions as much as possible into clear awareness. A lot of people do things without really knowing what they're doing. They're just sort of acting on automatic. And these days, the scientists tell us that actually quite a lot of what's happening is subliminal, meaning that it's not conscious. So, for example, I'm not consciously choosing to make my heart beat, and I'm not consciously choosing to breathe. I'm not consciously choosing to digest the food in the belly. But even beyond that, when there is experiences going on, one is only able to cognize a certain amount. You can't actually cognize everything that's going on. It has to be at least a percentage of a second of duration of something happening in order to be able to cognize it. This is why in the old days when people went to movie theaters, they would, while the people are taking their seats, something would flash on the screen that says, "Drink Coke," and it would flash for a very short fragment of a second, so that the people in the audience are not aware that they saw that sign. It's a subliminal message. And yet, because of having that makes an impression, and then they suddenly feel the wish for Coke, and they don't have any idea where it came from, because they were not aware of that contact. And so then they may get up and get a Coke. And then even when doing something intentional, say if I'm reading the notes that I took for this talk, I am not actually like sounding out each letter. It's like v, v, o, la, vol, volition. I'm not consciously doing that. I've got I'm able to automatically skim over words while reading, with only a subliminal connection to the action of reading. So there's something that was intentional at some kind of a large scale that I intended to, put my eyes there and to read this. Or if I'm walking because I'm doing walking meditation, or because I'm walking to the mailbox to pick up the mail, I, in some kind of a very general way, I'm intending to walk, but for most people, they're not aware of lifting, moving, and placing each and every step. The walking activity is not conscious. It's actually subliminal. It's below the level of awareness, but it's still part of, in the Buddhist sense, it's still part of vijnana, but we're not aware of it. So then, I believe that it can go far beyond this, that a person could get out of bed, take a shower, make the bed, cook breakfast, eat breakfast, get in the car and drive to work, all the while thinking about something else and not forming any kind of clarity about what they were intending all along that way. So it's possible to be not conscious and not aware. And part of the training for us is, if we realize how much can be for the welfare of us and for other beings, and how much can be for the harm of us and other beings, and realizing the karmic consequences of both doing something harmful or refraining from something harmful, if we realized how much suffering is in the world because of the careless, thoughtless, or even actively harmful choices that were made by beings and that were made by us in the past, we should be terrified. We should be heedful. We should be like, oh my goodness, walking on eggshells, saying, don't let me cause any harm. Please let me be so just taking care, keeping actively up with my good intentions, not wanting to inadvertently or intentionally to fall into the trap of doing something harmful. There's a part of the Satipatthana, which also appears in a lot of places in the suttas, where the Buddha recommends mindfulness and clear comprehension. That's called, in Pāli, it's called sati sampajanya. Sati is mindfulness, and then sam is either with or perfect, and pa, it makes it strong, and janya is knowing. So having that very clear understanding. Ajahn Thanissaro gives a wonderful method for perfecting sati sampajanya, and that is just try as continuously as you can, just know, what am I doing right now? Okay, I'm sitting and talking. You're sitting and listening, or I guess if I looked, I could see maybe you're sitting and listening and drinking a cup of tea, or you're sitting and listening and reading the paper, or something like that, or maybe you're walking. But as you go through the day, whether standing, walking, typing, talking, washing up, or any kind of activity, if you could just know and even talk to yourself and say, now I'm typing, now I'm walking. And if what you had to tell yourself is, now I'm watching something stupid on my computer, then just the process of bringing it up to the level of a conscious choice says, I chose to do this I chose to use my minute like this, you know, and then it would make you kind of like stop and examine that. And so it would help you to greatly to become much more skillful in everything that you do, simply by bringing up the awareness and you know, not doing anything that's like extremely subtle or difficult to see, but just what am I doing? What am I doing right now? And then trying to make this continuous throughout the day. And in doing it that way, it can be that some of the activities which in an ordinary person would be at the subliminal level without conscious awareness, some of those activities might be raised up to the level of being consciously aware. So like if I'm typing and I, you know, could notice raising and lowering the fingers, or, you know, swiping with 3 fingers or swiping with 1 finger, or whatever I'm doing on the computer, those things could be brought up to out of the netherworld or the darkness of unawareness and up into the light of awareness. And this can be beneficial to the extent that we're able to do this. So the volition is a nutriment which continuously feeds and supports the continuation of the life of the individual. And if you have that habit for your entire life of making choices that continue and support the life of you yourself as an individual, and you never stop to examine that with wisdom, but you're just thinking, you know, let me live. Then it's probable that this same habit pattern could carry you over to the subsequent life. Susie had a wonderful question yesterday about why humans are built this way. Why are we built to choose dukkha? And I would say that it's the result of evolution. So there are other kinds of beings, like a plant, which is not exercising intentional volition in sprouting or growing. They're just following a program that's built into the genetic of that organism. And then there are many creatures that are sort of simple, and they've got a certain number of things that they're, you know, programmed to do in the realm of getting around and finding their food or making their shelter or mating or getting rest and so forth like that, that they're operating according to a program. And we can see that these activities are, they may not have as much free will about it as we do, because when the environment changes, they don't have as much of an ability to adjust their pattern in order to accommodate the changes in the environment. Instead, they just die. And they may die in a lot of pain and difficulty because they don't have as much of a repertoire to choose to do something different to adjust. But the human is kind of unique among animals because humans are especially good at adapting to many different changes and to changes in the climate, changes in the natural world, changes in the social situation. And it's because we evolved to have the brains that are so adaptable that the human beings got to spread out of wherever they started and to walk until they were existing in all the 6 continents of the world, and whether it be in the desert or in the ice and snow or in the jungle, wherever they are, they've been able to adjust to these different kinds of environments and situations. Until now, the humans are so numerous that we're able to occupy every inch of the whole world, it seems, and we have the ability to crowd out all the other species because we're so successful. So how do humans have this quality to a highly developed degree is that there are in the human mind many redundant pathways, any one of which can be good enough to take care of the situation that we find ourselves in. And because of this redundancy, there may be some pathways that are...
You were freezing again.
Question?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you were freezing up. It was breaking up. So could you repeat what you just said, please?
Oh, thank you. I don't know why it's breaking up.
I don't know. Our connection is good. It might be that Marine's connection is not so good. I didn't see you freeze up or anything at all.
Okay. Let me go back. Okay. I know that Maureen is like me. We both have a shared interest in science. So there's a redundancy where there are many different ways to solve the same problem and be able to survive. And evolution happens because of this redundancy. So there are some abilities that we have that are sort of like latent. We never have to use them because it doesn't come up. And then if the circumstance or the situation changes drastically, we can find that these latent abilities can be available for us to use. So then in this kind of materialistic way, we're designed with this ability to make choices. And that enables us to choose the continuation of our individual life. I often reflect about how the quality of the situation that I'm in is the result of billions and billions of choices that were made by me during this life and during the preceding lives, and also by all the other individuals who made choices that impinge on my existence. So being here in this world with its climate crisis, with the number of trees that we have, with the amount of pavement that we have, with the amount of food that we have, with the cultural values that we have, and even with the type of body or type of brain that we have. All of this is connected in this web of interdependence over immeasurable amounts of time and immeasurable amounts of distance to everything that was preceding in time, and to the others that have touched and interacted over these distances. And it's exactly because of this contemplation that makes me realize how the choices that I make, even apart from the question of of rebirth or coming to the end of rebirth, that the choices that I make can be beneficial or harmful to the future. And I don't want to do any more harm. I've done so much harm in the past, in this life and in the preceding lives. It's almost like immeasurable how much harm I could have done. I don't wish to choose to do any more harm. I'll close my portion of this talk with the reflection that's one of the 5 things to be reflected upon again and again by all persons. It says, I am the owner of my karma, born of my karma, abide supported by my karma, protected by my karma, related to my karma. Whatever karma I shall do, whether for good or for ill, of that I will be the heir.
I have,
Yes.
Lucy had her hand up for quite a while, so I don't know if you have time to do it or not. She put her hand down now, but she had it up while you were speaking.
That maybe it's not the time for discussion. So I let it go.
I'm just coming to the wrap of my talk, and the next period of time is your time for discussion and conversation. So I hoped that what I tried to give is not too much, but what you did on purpose. There's a lot of levels of this. It's like I'm choosing to drink a drink. Is it because I feel greedy? Is it because I feel nervous and want something to overcome my nervousness? Is it because I'm just simply trying to sustain this body in order to have it be able to live and be healthy and practice the Dhamma for another day or for another few moments? There can be actually different layers and levels of intentionality coming into any simple action that we do. If we can be clear about it, and if we notice our wholesome and beneficial karma and focus on that, keep that in our awareness, and make the effort to act out of the beneficial intentions, that is taking us halfway to the stage where we begin to practice, where we are aiming to let go of clinging to existence. So then we're not doing anything because of desire for a future existence or for desire of what the rest of this existence is going to be. Instead, our whole aim at that level becomes with the intention of finding out how to let go. And once we found out, to actually let go of that craving and clinging and having the mind be stuck on existence. This is going to be the theme of the meditation that we'll be doing a little bit after this. Okay, so now I shall stop and invite your comments or questions. Okay. Oh, Maureen, hand up. Perfect.
I shouldn't jump ahead of the other person then, who had
No,
questions
you are the
for
first
you.
in line, because this is what the meaning of the hand up is, that people show up in sequence. So please go ahead if you want to.
Okay. Yes. Um, evolution. The key thing that allowed Darwin and the other guy to realize what was going on was that there were far more creatures reproduced than actually survived to adulthood in all animals and plants and that kind of thing. The number of seeds and all that sort of thing. And that's when they landed on the idea of survival of the fittest. And I agree that humans have evolved to have redundancy. Resilience that allows choices and the ways they can solve problems. Other animals have that full invasive species on the planet, as far as I can see. And if we have no further existence, then we have got rid of the thing that pushes evolution. So we'll have come to a kind of dead end in a way. And you know, people are doing that. In a lot of advanced societies, they aren't reproducing to the enough to replace themselves. You know, in Japan and China and a lot of other places. And I think that free will is what we're talking about. And we only have free will if we're aware and we have the understanding of that subconscious and the subliminal aspects of the way we assess situations. So it's very valuable to be developing that, incredibly valuable. But I'm a lot of people don't seem to have free will. They're already captured by their subliminal choices, the adverts for Coke kind of thing, but on much worse things than just Coca-Cola. So that there is no free will really acting there. It's that they're just following their subliminal desires, been implanted. It's a very dark view of humanity at the moment for me. So anyway, that's just my comment, and that's all I have to say, really.
Maureen, I take your correction that this Darwinian redundancy does exist in other kinds of animals and even plants, and that's how animals and plants are able to evolve. But for the human, we have this we have an ability of being conscious of the process, and that's what gives us the opportunity of making choices. I do sometimes feel that the amount of free will that we have is like the little tugboat which is pulling the great ocean liner. And the ocean liner is not able to turn on the dime because it has quite a lot of momentum because of its tremendous mass. So the tremendous mass of all the previous causes and conditions is going in a certain direction. But we've got this little bit of free will, which is able to turn the direction little by little until that great ocean liner is able to shift its direction and to come into the harbor. And when it finally, comes into safely being into its berth in the harbor, we could say that's when we've, accomplished our great aspiration. So I hope that we can be realistic and seeing in the kind of like the horrible way about everything in the world, but also having such hope that at any moment it's possible to choose not non-greed, non-grasping. And that's where we find our freedom. In the mythology of the cycles of existence in the Digha Nikaya, after the humanity had deteriorated to be very corrupted and warlike and terrible, and some of the people ran away and hid out in the forest. And then after the war was over, they came out and they found their friend, and they say, "Oh, friend, are you still alive?" And they said, "Yes, friend, I'm still alive." And so those few people who had escaped from the war had an idea. They thought, well, suppose we decided to give up killing. Let's try that. And then that becomes like the little seed at which the revival of beneficent civilization comes to be. Susie.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Maureen.
Thank you for that little bit of hope. But there is one thing. This is a book that is not a Buddhist book, but it's really at the core of it Buddhist, and that's Kate Raworth's Donut Economics. And it talks about living in the sweet spot where there isn't exploitation and that we aren't totally trashing our resources and our environment. But I don't know whether you would want to read that, but there are people talking about this kind of way of living. Yeah.
If anybody wants me to read a book, they have to send me a book, because I'm not able to go to the store and buy my own books. Okay, Susie?
Thank you. I just wanted to add on my perspective in this, that this particular practice is really huge. It's really big. It addresses all different levels of subconscious, subliminal consciousness and action, volition, and all that. It's not really easy. And also at the end, I mean, for us to think that we have tremendous own free will, we really not quite, at least in this lifetime anyway, because when we're born, I believe that we already born with a different status of consciousness, right? A different status. I mean, some of you might be saying that, well, all humans are born equal, but you can see that even babies have a different temperament, have a different range of reaction to the same stimulus, and so on and so forth. And that is the beginning to discern, to indicate that there's a different path for these little beings that are born into this world. That, number one, they're all set, there's a certain setting that some level of consciousness, perhaps, a little bit different, that they have a little tendency already to go this way and that way. And by the time they come in touch with the Dhamma, it's already accumulated and built up into habit and this and that. So it's really huge, for us to be thinking that we have, our own free will. They can do it tomorrow and all that. But just to remind what a tremendous challenge, that we are all in this in order to clean up our future actions so that we don't add on to the accumulative bad karma that result in a limitation of the world, and so on and so forth going forward. And anyway, so my remark, I want to end my remark with reminding you that even as a biological scientist, we had investigated in the commonality of the genetic material among all the animals and humans and so on. And we are 99.9% with the, our genetic material is 99.9% in common with baboon. So the difference is 0.09. So I was just going to say, we're all in this together, and we were just a little bit more lucky that we have, tiny bit of opportunity to be able to clean up. So please use that little bit of that ability appropriately, and to the world and to the mankind and animal kind and plants as well. Anyway, so thank you for the opportunity to address this.
Okay, you're welcome. Ananaya.
Oops. Challenge with me, but myself. This is along the lines of evolution and how we form our worlds and what's already in there. As Susie pointed out, we come in with a body of comic things, and then it proceeds from there. PBS had a really wonderful documentary, and I think it's in 2 or 3 parts, on current neuroscience and how the brain actually sees and perceives. And so they had this whole series. I recommend looking for it in just doing a Google search. So when the brain through the eyes see, right? So that you're going from your eyes to back where the brain actually is seeing. And the thing is that when we as Buddhists talk about everything, the perception of things and how different that can be from one person to the next, and how deluded we can be by misperceptions. And so this series demonstrated scientifically that everybody is only seeing this much. How it layers and what part it triggers, it's like literally the brain is taking little bits and pieces that it sees, and then hears and makes up our world and our view. It's absolutely, I was sitting there, just my jaw dropped when they started talking about, no wonder it's so screwy, because literally we are not collectively seeing clearly. So that's one. And then a small point is still evolution. Also on PBS, they had this, there is an iguana on Darwin, right? And iguanas, as a lizard, generally, they don't swim. This iguana has evolved to swim, dives down 20 feet or whatever, and eats algae off of a rock in the ocean. And for that creature to get down is one thing, but to get up the rock is another. So it's really a formidable kind of challenge. Then if they, because we're that part in South America, off the coast of South America, has frequent El Niños, which sometimes, which are huge amounts of rain and then nothing. During those drought periods, they discovered that with their research, that the lizard can actually shrink in size. And when the rains come and things are more abundant, they go back to their normal size. They go back to their normal size. It's extraordinary. This is something that they just discovered recently. So, so those two factors: one, the drive to stay alive is obviously very, very, very deep and embedded in all of us, including lizards, and that we really do only see a piece of life. We're really not seeing everything. It's just a fascinating thing, and it fits to me really well with what the Buddha has said all along. You know, you're only ever, you know, there's only this little bit. You really don't have. You don't have the whole picture of what this is all about, and you have to do the work in order to clear your brain, or not. I mean, your mind. So anyway, thank you.
Just recalling that the drive to stay alive is so powerful and so deeply embedded in all beings. And this is why it's a miracle that there was a Sama Sambuddha which was able to see that the very thing that's beneficial to us for the sake of staying alive is also the cause of our deepest, most profound, and most persistent suffering and dukkha, and that there is a way to step out of that and come to the end of dukkha. So all of what we see in the materialistic-based world of science, including many different fields, you know, not only biology, but even the study of psychology, neurology, sociology, criminology, even the study of literature, and all of them are, you know, so skillful in investigating different aspects of the First Noble Truth. So we have in common with a lot of scientists the investigation of the First Noble Truth, and it helps us to take advantage of what we know, what's sort of like matching up with our culture in ways to understand the First Noble Truth. But we got to remember that the Buddha taught 4 Noble Truths. And outside of Buddhism, we don't truly find the insight of the end of dukkha and the pathways leading to the end of dukkha. Now I'll call on Richard. I'm sure that you were about to say the same thing.
Oh, thank you. This sutra on the sun's flesh is I don't know how to put it. It's like a pattern where you're going from one thing to the next. So you start with the 4 elements. Well, the body is made out of those 4 elements, and that's the 4 types of nutrition. Okay, in terms of not 4 types of nutrition, but in terms of food, 4 types of food. Sorry, I said the wrong thing. So those 4 elements are what you're taking in to keep this body, you know, going, right? And so once you have a body, then you have 5 senses, right? So it talks about, you know, it's the desire for the lust for the cords of the 5 senses, okay, and you know, which is binding one, and those 5 senses cause you to have contact, okay, which is the next nutriment. But that contact is really at a certain level, it's a very agitating experience. You may enjoy things here and there, but on the whole, it's quite a difficult experience because it's constantly just battering you. You know how some people, like maybe a mother gets overwhelmed, you know, the father wants this and the kids want this, and this needs to be done, and everything is like, you know, hey, I want some peace and quiet. You know, everyone, you know, shut up, calm down, or something, as an example. Because it's all bothering you. And if you notice, it's talking about, you know, when they're standing next to a wall, well, that's earth, you know, next to a tree, well, they use tree to get wood to make fire, right? The next one is in water, you know, and the last one is in air, right? So those are the 4 elements again. So it's just saying that contact with all these elements really just causes a bunch of agitation and problem and difficulty for you, right? And because that contact is involved in the three feelings. Now, to get to, this is the pattern I just came to me as you were talking, to get to the next section, which is the nutriment here, it's called mental volition. Well, this is mana sancetana, okay? Or mano sancetana. So mano is your mind's own imaginary idea that this is mine, this is myself, this I am, like that. So combined with san means to bring together, with your cetana, your will, right? So those things coming together are impelling you to take birth again and again, right? But because of that, you didn't give the example, but two strong men are dragging you towards a charcoal pit and you don't want to die, but you're going to die. Well, it's that mano sancetana bringing you in to this world. Well, guess what? We're all heading for death. You know what I mean? We don't want to die, but because of that process in our minds, now we're impelled. Now we're going there, and there's not much you can do about it. And that particular thing is the nutriment of mental volition, fully understood. Craving. So that's the three kinds of craving, and those are all existences craving. Okay, existence for sensual pleasure, existence for becoming, and the other. I'm not sure how it works exactly, but the other thing where you have how does it go again? Three types of, or does it mean the material world existence, the heavenly world existence, and the
material,
formless existence?
the
Yeah,
fine material and
yeah.
immaterial.
Fine material, right? So that's where that existence comes in. Sorry, I read the wrong thing here in my note. So I don't want to spoil the next part, but the next part is which I'm sure you're going to get into in a later lecture, is like the crescendo of all of it. But what I'm trying to say is you need to see that there's a pattern going on here, and they're all interrelated, and it's a growth pattern, you might say, right? So anyways, that's all I wanted to say on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have gone over the time, in part because I talked too much. I'm sorry. Now, I propose that if you need to take just 1 or 2 minutes to stretch or wiggle the body or something like that, and then we'll come back for a guided meditation.